Why are the religious so ignorant when it comes to atheism? None of them seem to know what the hell it is or what we actually think, mostly because they just don't care. And why not? Because this is never about us. It's about keeping butts in seats and the money rolling in. So let's take yet another one of these laughable jokes apart, shall we? Stay tuned. So, today we're going to get back to Pastor Dave Earley and his series on atheism. You know, that thing that he doesn't actually know a damn thing about, but he isn't going to let that slow him down. Anyway, this time around, he's going to quote a whole bunch of Bible verses, things that no atheist gives the slightest damn about, and otherwise, he's just going to show us that Dave might have a problem. Maybe. I mean, no accusations or anything, but we've seen this kind of thing many times before. So, before he gets himself into trouble, let's get started.
Why do people become atheists? What is it that brings someone to the place where they say, there is no God, there's no God in the universe?
In reality, nothing. Everyone starts out as a default atheist. And I do mean default atheist because that's what everyone starts out as. They don't have any beliefs, and that's fine. They're not the silly straw man that this moron is pushing. Absolutely nobody pops out of the womb singing a hymn and praising Jesus. It just doesn't happen. If you're going to become a theist of some stripe down the road, you have to be brainwashed into it, and that's what just about every religion out there is trying to do. Childhood indoctrination is child abuse. Now, if you want to know why some people deconvert from religion back into atheism, the answer there is pretty varied. Lots of us learned so much about their religion that they realized that it was all nonsense from the start. We were brainwashed and we got better. Now, there are certainly people out there who will leave religion for reasons that I personally don't think are very good. But you can take that up with them, not me. For me, it's a complete and total lack of any kind of corroboratory evidence that Christianity, or any other religion for that matter, is factually, demonstrably, and objectively true. If you want to change that, you've got a lot of work ahead of you. Good luck.
How can they say that? How did they get there? Well, I think there are three main causes, reasons why people become atheists. A lack of evidence. I had a friend, he grew up in a home, both his parents were atheists, they were professors. He was taught from birth, there is no God.
Yeah, not so much. I mean, sure, there are plenty of people who didn't grow up with the religious indoctrination that most people seem to have to go through. My kids are an example of that. However, I never sat there and drummed, there is no God, there is no God, there is no God, into their heads. I taught them to question, to doubt, and to demand evidence for everything in their lives from the very beginning, and they have made an educated choice not to adopt a religious belief. They're atheists because they're educated, not because they're ignorant. If you want to see ignorance, go look at a fundamentalist or evangelical Christian home, where the parents are so entirely deluded that they force their children to believe in things without any kind of evidence whatsoever, because they simply demand that they cannot see, hear, or think about anything that doesn't come out of the Bible. These are the people who homeschool. These are the people who control the friends their children are allowed to have, the TV shows they're allowed to watch, the music they're allowed to listen to, yada, yada, yada. It's all bullshit. That's blatant ignorance, Dave, and I'm sorry to say, that's you. Maybe you just ought to do something about that.
But, so he was ignorant of all the evidence that there was a God.
Yeah, which evidence is that exactly? Because whether you like it or not, there simply isn't any. what you're talking about is confirmation bias. I'm not going into that because I've done it many, many times before, and I figure it gets kind of tiring, but you can't start with an emotionally comforting conclusion, declare that it's true because it makes you happy, and then just backfill in all the data points that confirm your beliefs and ignore all the ones that don't. And that's what you people are doing. That's all you people are doing. You people need to knock that off.
He spent 2.5 years studying the Bible with me, and at the end of that time, he got on his knees and gave his life to the true and living God, and he's followed God the rest of his life. He was just lacking evidence. He was ignorant.
No, he became ignorant. He focused on his ignorance. That's the problem. Because the one thing that I see constantly when I talk to Christians, and let's be honest, this does apply to all theists equally, is that they're not willing to step back from their faith and try to justify their actual beliefs rationally. They can't say, well, how do I know that God is real? How do I prove it? What evidence is there that I can present to others that would show that what I believe is so? Because that's something that they simply cannot question. It has to be true, or they will crumble beneath a torrent of self-doubt and fear. And this is something that most religions drum into your head from a very early age. You're not allowed to doubt. You're not allowed to ask most questions. You're not allowed to say, hey, how do we actually know that's true? This is why religion is such a mind poison. The first thing that a budding theist learns is that they can't actually ask any questions to verify the religion. They have to accept it as gospel truth, and that's not how rational people operate.
Other people become atheists because they're disappointed.
Yeah, show me on the doll where the priest touched you. This is a really common claim, but it's virtually never true, at least not for rational atheists. Now, like I said, there are people who do reject religion because someone they love died or someone in the church hurt them, but that is, at least in my personal experience, a very, very small number of people. Most people, again, in my experience, who deconvert from religion, they do so because the beliefs just didn't stand up to any kind of skeptical rigor. And that's why the religious discourage any of that, because they know that the fastest way out of the pews, the fastest way out of the religion, is to actually study the religion itself. And they need you there in the pews and in the religion because they need your money. What we're seeing Dave doing here is just making excuses aimed at keeping his flock around. If he tried pulling this on an actual atheist, we'd just laugh, because this guy is a complete dumbass. And that's hardly a surprise, is it?
Something bad happened to them. They experienced a great trauma. They really wanted something to turn out a certain way, and it didn't turn out that way. So they got mad at God.
We don't believe in your God, you dillweed. Get it through your stupid head. Of course, that would require thought, and the religious are singularly terrible at that, aren't they? Because this all becomes ridiculous when they say that we're mad at God, or we just want to sin, or the devil made us do it, or whatever else. We don't believe any of those things are real. Fucking rent a clue and figure it out. Now, this goes right back to the fact that Dave and apologists like him, they're not really talking to us. They're talking about us. They're making things up about us, but they're strictly talking to people who are sitting in the pews and paying their bills. It's a way to convince the already gullible not to ask any questions, because that's what they need. They need these people to remain stupid. It's designed to make them stick around and keep filling the collection plate week after week after week. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who has sat in a church and listened to a sermon. Okay, you got your half hour of entertainment, now pay up. That's what this is. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And the second you realize that, it's something you really can't unsee. Give it a shot. pay attention to their words. Watch when they have their hands out, because it's quite telling.
If God is sovereign, then God should have fixed this. God should have changed that. God should have done this. So they get disappointed with God. So they say, well, there just is no God.
And that just proves, once again, that Dave has never met an actual atheist in his life. At least not a rational one. He might have met some of those crazy people who say, well, I deconverted and I was an atheist, but then I came back to the church. No, you didn't. You're full of shit. That's also not a surprise because these people tend to be very ignorant. They tend to say things that they don't understand at all. They speak from their pulpits about things they obviously know nothing about, knowing full well that their audience, the ones in the pews paying their bills, are even more ignorant than they are. These people ought to be embarrassed at the crap in their heads. Dave ought to be embarrassed at the crap coming out of his mouth. He isn't, though, and isn't that sad?
If he's not the way I want him, then there is no God. The third is defiance. It says in Romans chapter 1, and we're going to read this in a minute, that they've suppressed the truth. They know that there's a God, but they've suppressed the truth of God. They're choosing to say there is no God.
Yeah, it says something in your silly book of make-believe, and because you believe it, because you have blind faith without any kind of corroboratory evidence, because you've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to not ask any questions or expect rational validation for the crap in your head, therefore it's gotta be true. Now, I shouldn't have to explain just how stupid this is, but unfortunately, I do. And guess what? Other religious books say the exact same things. Christians are only Christians because they are choosing to reject the one true God that they know for a fact is real and put their beliefs in something else. Yeah, everybody says the same shit. You're not impressive. So, Dave, you're just lying to people because you know that some other God is the real one and you're just trying to mislead them. That's what you're saying about other religions and atheism. That's what other religions are saying about you. Just ask the people who believe that. Then just realize how stupid it is when you do it, because that's what you complain about when others do it. Dave, grow the hell up.
It's not an intellectual matter for them, really, but it's a matter of the will. And I think that's a primary reason why people become atheists, to the people I've talked to.
I'm willing to bet that you've never talked to anyone, at least not a rational, present atheist who has no interest in coming back to your fold. We don't want to go back because we haven't seen anything to convince us that you're not spouting shit all over yourself. I'm sure the only ones that Dave ever talks to are the ones who do come back crawling, groveling, please take us back, we were wrong. Because they never had a good intellectual reason to leave in the first place. Because I'm sure Dave never leaves the confines of his church, because that's his fucking safe space. I assure you that he's never talked to someone like me, because none of this crap would ever fly for a second, and that's why people like Dave don't want to talk to people like me, because people like me scare the crap out of them. We're not going to listen to any of this faith-based garbage. We're not going to take these empty platitudes seriously. And that's why people like Dave lie about people like me. Because what else can they do?
You talk to them long enough, you realize this is what the issue is. You can say, if I gave you all the evidence and enough evidence to believe, would you give your life to God? And they say no.
It's because your so-called evidence is crap. It's based on the preconceived notions that you've had forced into your head since childhood and the inability to step back and evaluate any of it rationally without your faith getting in the way. These people are incapable of questioning the things that they have faith in because, for some reason, that's a mortal sin, and they can't have that. Well, of course it's a mortal sin. It's a method of mind control. It's a method of controlling your ass. Figure that shit out. Except it really isn't, because if there is no God, then there is no sin. So the fear that you're pushing means absolutely nothing to anybody with a brain in their head. It's why they keep telling people not to question, because they can't quite get across that line. They can't make decisions based on rational thoughts because these are not rational people. It's why they remain so delusional.
They still want to do life without God. It's a matter of arrogance. It says in Psalm 10, verse 4, the wicked in his proud countenance, in his pride, does not seek God. God is in none of his thoughts. He has no room for God.
Okay. He's just going to make a bunch of unsupported claims and read a bunch of meaningless passages out of his book of mythology, so we're going to get past all that. If I wanted to be read to, I wouldn't be watching your video. I wouldn't be laughing at your video. I was hoping, and yes, I know this is kind of absurd because I know this is never going to happen, but I was kind of hoping that you'd try to make some sense. There I go being overly optimistic again. Sue me. So anyway, we'll rejoin him on the other end of his sermonizing because, this is all being done for Christians, not for atheists. We can see right through that shit. Maybe once he's done, maybe he can do better then.
It's pride. I don't need God. I've talked to a lot of people like that. Some people it's just wickedness. It says in Psalm 14, verse 1, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. If I say there is no God, then they become corrupt. They've done abominable works. There's none that does good. See, if I say there's no God, there's no accountability. So I can do any wicked thing I want, and it's not wicked because I say it's okay. The third one is idolatry. This is the main one. If I say there's no God, then I get to be God. It says in Romans chapter 1, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven. The judgment of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness and ungodliness of men who suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Verse 19. Because what may be known of God is revealed in them. For God has shown it to them. There's plenty of evidence. The creation has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. Your conscience has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. Your longing for eternity has the Creator's fingerprints all over it. It says, for since the creation of the world is invisible, attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. Even his eternal power and his Godhead, so they are without excuse. There's plenty of evidence to believe in God. Because although they knew God, they didn't glorify him as God. They wanted to be their God. They weren't thankful. They became futile in their hearts. And it leads to perversion.
Yeah, there he goes again. I said it in the last video, and I'll say it again. You gotta watch it when you get a Christian preacher going off on homosexuality and perversion all the time, because that could be a good indicator that they've got some questions about their own sexuality. You can look at everyone from Ted Haggard on down, where they were talking about homosexuality and condemning homosexuality all the time, just before they got caught in a public restroom getting a blowjob from a male prostitute. It's really not that hard to see, but hey, this guy just might have an issue that he's terrified to explore, and that's one more thing that religion does to screw you up. It makes you incapable of actually examining your life fairly and without reservation, and realizing that a lot of the things that these people really want to do, there's actually nothing wrong with it. Anyway, I'm not going to say anything specifically about Dave here because I don't know, and I'm not going to accuse him of anything without evidence, but there's an awful lot of them that do get caught with their hands in the cookie jar and their dick up the choir boy's ass. Just saying.
It says, therefore God gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves. Why is this incredible explosion of homosexuality and sexual perversion? Because when you have enough people going into idolatry, it leads you to perversion. God says, if you want to serve, if you want to worship yourselves, worship yourself. But I'm stepping out of the picture.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe if God just made himself known unambiguously and clearly to everyone, not through the words of these losers, but, something that everybody can see without question, then maybe people wouldn't be atheists. Ever think about that? No, of course not, because that would require perspective, and the religious are really bad at that, among many other things. Of course, they just come up with lots of excuses for why God doesn't work that way, and the number one reason that God doesn't work that way is because there's no reason whatsoever to think that God is real in the first place, and I think these guys know it, and they know that if they were honest, they'd lose their jobs. This isn't about being honest. This isn't about actually saying, hey, here's what we have the evidence for. Here's what we can support and defend through verifiable proof. These are people who don't know how to be honest. It's just about keeping the scam going and scooping up all that money. And some of these people don't even know it's a scam. They're doing it for other people. How pathetic is that?
This is God gave them up to vile passions. They're going to exchange natural use for wisdom against nature, and men, leaving natural use for women. Burning their lusts, while another man committing was shameful, receiving themselves penalty thererein. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to the base minds to do those things that are not fitting. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness, their whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil, disobedient parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, knowing the righteous judgment of God, and that those who practice such things are deserving of death. Not only do the same, but applaud those who practice them.
We just had a whole month in our country celebrating homosexuality. That's described right there. That's perversion. It's because of idolatry. It's because people choose not to worship God.
So, we just skipped over more of his incoherent Bible reading because I don't give a shit about the Bible, and neither should anyone else. It's an instruction manual for stupidity. However, let's just move on. He's immediately back to bashing on the gay because I think Dave has a problem. I don't know for sure, and if he does, that's fine because there's nothing wrong with being gay, but yeah, he talks about it an awful lot for someone who's a committed straight guy, doesn't he? He might be a whole lot happier if he just admit to himself that maybe his interests don't align with what's in the Bible. And that's perfectly okay. In fact, I think he'd be a whole lot happier that way. Maybe it's time he got that through his head. Otherwise, he just might be caught somewhere bending over an altar boy and pounding him right up the ass. You know, that's what happens if you look at things like the Catholic Church, the Baptists, and all the other big-name religions that tend to have a problem. Being gay is fine. Being a pedophile is not. Stop now before it gets worse.
Look, there is a God. There's plenty of evidence for God. And He designed the universe, so the only way it really works is if He is in the center. And the only way your life works is if He is your God and you do what He says.
And how exactly do you know that? Because this comes right back around to put up or shut up. And the religious are piss poor at either one of those. This whole thing was just a rambling screed with a few choice stops that provided a window into Dave's potential sexuality about, well, I really want this to be true, so it has to be because I say so, so there. There's absolutely nothing of substance here. It's all empty claims and Bible verses and bald assertions without any credible evidence. It's why all of this becomes so ludicrous in the end. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you have faith in. I don't care what you want to be so. I care what you can prove, and you people can't prove a damn thing. Nothing at all. What you claim as evidence is so absurdly unimpressive because you're just cherry-picking the things that make you happy to believe in and lead you to the conclusion that you desperately want to reach. Then you tell yourselves stories about how people could possibly reject the crap in your heads because you don't care why they actually do it. You care only that your fifis continue to get coddled. And that's childish. This is exactly why we laugh at these people. In essence, they're saying, Will, you're hurting my feelings and you're a mean poopy head. Yeah, fuck you. Grow the hell up. Learn how to think, not what to think, not what to believe, not what makes you happy, but how to form credible thought patterns based on evidence, based on reason and rational thinking. Learn how to do that. You need to care if the crap in your head actually comports to objective reality, because the stuff in your head right now doesn't. It just doesn't. This ought to be embarrassing for you people, and the fact that it's not betrays just how weak your critical thinking skills actually are. Because you don't give a damn, and that's a problem. It's also a problem that they deny their perfectly natural urges until they can't take it anymore. They do something harmful to an innocent person, and then they think they can just say, "Well, I'm sorry," to an imaginary man in the sky, and everything will be forgiven. But that doesn't work either, because human law doesn't care about your stupid platitudes to an imaginary man in the sky. Your asses go into prison, and it should. Anyhow, there's just one more video to do, and that'll be coming up in the next week or so whenever I get around to it. Is anyone really impressed with Dave Earley? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you all next time.
Boom, dicky bum, 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 dicky bum.